Part 1. The Blizzard's Mercy. When the Wyoming wind howls like a banshee, it spares no one. Yet for Clara Thornton, stranded with her 3 infants in a merciless blizzard, it was the storm that delivered a stranger who would change her life forever. The Bighorn Basin in winter is no place for the faint of heart. Snow falls not in gentle drifts but in savage curtains, swallowing landmarks and hope alike. For Clara Thornton, a widow of 25 clutching 3 fragile lives to her chest, the Wyoming wilderness was both a crucible of despair and, improbably, a cradle of redemption. Her wagon, broken and stranded in a sea of white, groaned under the weight of a storm that cared nothing for her grief or her baby's faint cries. But as the world turned to ice around her, a lone figure emerged from the blizzard, a cowboy named Ethan Caldwell, whose weathered hands and guarded heart would offer more than shelter. This is the story of how survival forged an unlikely bond, how loss gave way to love, and how a frozen night in Wyoming set the stage for a family born from the ashes of hardship. Clara pressed her husband's old leather-bound journal against her heart, its worn cover a tether to a life that now felt like a dream. Samuel had given it to her just before the fever claimed him 3 months ago, leaving her alone with their newborn triplets and a mountain of debts in their modest Philadelphia home. Outside, the Wyoming wind screamed, clawing through the cracks of the crippled wagon where she huddled with Emma, Jacob, and Lily. The storm had erased the world beyond the canvas walls, turning the trail to Sheridan into a featureless void. "Just a little longer, my loves," Clara whispered, her breath clouding in the frigid air. She leaned over the makeshift pallet where her 3-month-old triplets lay bundled together, their tiny faces pinched with cold. Emma, the smallest, let out a feeble whimper, her lips trembling despite the extra shawl Clara had draped over her. Jacob, usually the sturdiest, had grown eerily still, while Lily's shallow, labored breath sent spikes of panic through Clara's chest. 6 hours ago, their wagon had lurched into a snowdrift, snapping a wheel and pitching them into this frozen purgatory. Their driver, Mr. Hawkins, had staggered off into the storm to find help, his silhouette vanishing into the white 4 hours past. Clara's hope was fading as fast as the daylight. "Stay with me," she pleaded, gathering the infants against her, willing her own dwindling warmth into their tiny bodies. Her fingers, stiff and raw from the cold, fumbled as she tucked the blankets tighter. The wagon shuddered under another gust, its creaks a grim reminder of their isolation. Clara closed her eyes, trying to summon the memory of a spring day on their Philadelphia porch, when she and Samuel had laughed about the future, their hands clasped as they imagined a single child. 3 miracles, not one, Samuel had said when the doctor announced triplets, his hazel eyes alight with awe. He'd spent nights carving a triple cradle, its curves a testament to his love, but he never lived to see it finished. The fever took him in 5 brutal days, leaving Clara to face motherhood alone. "Your papa would be so proud," she murmured to her babies, rocking them as the cold sank deeper into her bones. A letter from her cousin Margaret in Sheridan had promised salvation, a home, family, a fresh start. The journey west had drained Clara's last savings, but Margaret's offer had seemed worth the risk. Now, trapped miles from Sheridan with night closing in, that choice felt like a reckless gamble. The triplets had been fed an hour ago, Clara rationing the last of their milk with trembling hands. The cold was lulling them to sleep, a danger she recognized with growing dread. "Stay awake, my darlings," she urged, rubbing Jacob's cheeks when his eyelids drooped. Her own exhaustion was a heavy tide, 3 months of sleepless nights and the grueling journey sapping her strength. Hunger gnawed at her, and the cold dulled her senses, but she fought to stay alert. Samuel's pocket watch lay open beside her, its hands creeping toward 6 o'clock. Full darkness would soon smother any chance of rescue. In desperation, Clara began to sing, her voice cracking with cold and emotion. "Hush, little babies, don't you cry. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby." Lily stirred, her tiny hand slipping free to curl around Clara's finger. The gesture brought tears that froze on Clara's cheeks. "That's it, my sweet girl. Stay with Mama." A sudden sound outside snapped her from the song, the crunch of hooves in snow, growing louder. Her heart leapt, then faltered. Was it real, or was her mind conjuring hope from despair? "Hello," she called, her voice hoarse. "Is anyone there? Please, we need help." The wagon's door groaned open, admitting a blast of icy air and a swirl of snow. Clara curled protectively around her babies, squinting into the dim light. A towering figure filled the doorway, snow crusting a wide-brimmed hat and a heavy shearling coat. Fear gripped her. They were at this stranger's mercy. "Ma'am," the voice was deep, steady, laced with concern. "Anyone hurt?" Clara's throat tightened. "My babies, they're so cold. We've been stranded for hours." The man stepped inside, shutting the door against the wind. As he removed his hat, Clara glimpsed a face hardened by sun and wind, with piercing green eyes that quickly assessed their plight. He was in his mid-30s, with dark hair flecked with snow and a strong jaw set with purpose. "Ethan Caldwell," he said, already shrugging off his coat. "My ranch is 4 miles east." Without hesitation, he draped the warm coat over Clara and the triplets, then knelt to check the infants with a gentleness that belied his rugged frame. "They need warmth and shelter now," he said, his tone firm but kind. "So do you, ma'am." "Clara Thornton," she managed, tears threatening at his quiet compassion. "Our driver, Mr. Hawkins, went for help hours ago." Ethan's expression darkened. "Saw tracks heading north, nearly buried. I'll send men to find him once you're safe." His gaze softened as it lingered on the triplets. "3 little ones, all yours?" Clara nodded. "Triplets 3 months old, Emma, Jacob, and Lily." A flicker of awe crossed Ethan's face, quickly replaced by practicality. "My horse can carry us, but it'll be a cold ride. I've got blankets in my saddlebags. We'll wrap the babies between us for warmth." Clara hesitated, glancing at the wagon holding all she owned. "My belongings." Ethan was already gathering the children's sparse supplies. "I'll send men back tomorrow. Right now, these babies are what matter." His words cut through her fog of fear. Possessions were replaceable, her children were not. With practiced efficiency, Ethan helped Clara secure the triplets in slings against her chest, then wrapped them in blankets from his saddlebags. The preparations took mere minutes, but each second felt like an eternity as the cold tightened its grip. "Ready?" Ethan asked, his breath visible in the dim light. Clara nodded, though her legs felt like lead, and a dangerous drowsiness tugged at her mind. Ethan seemed to sense her frailty. Without a word, he lifted her and the triplets as if they were weightless, carrying them through the snow to a powerful black stallion standing resolute against the storm. "This is Titan," Ethan said, settling Clara sideways in the saddle before mounting behind her. "Best horse in Wyoming. He'll get us home." Clara felt Ethan's warmth envelop her as his arms reached around to take the reins, the triplets nestled securely between them. "Hold on," he said, his voice close. "And stay awake, Mrs. Thornton. Tell me about your little ones." As Titan moved steadily through the deepening snow, Clara fought the pull of sleep. "Jacob came first," she said, her voice faint against the wind. "Strong-willed like his father. Lily next, quiet but watchful. Emma last, so tiny the doctor thought she wouldn't make it. But she did," Ethan noted, guiding Titan around a drift with ease. "She's a fighter." Clara felt a spark of pride. "They all are." Ethan kept her talking, asking about her journey from Philadelphia, her plans in Sheridan, anything to keep her conscious. When her responses grew sluggish, he spoke instead, his voice a low rumble against her back. "Got nearly 2,000 acres," he said. "Started with a claim and 20 cattle 8 years ago. Built every barn, every fence myself." Pride threaded his words, a quiet testament to years of toil. "Do you live there alone?" Clara asked, the question slipping out through her haze. A pause followed. "Just me and the ranch hands now," Ethan said finally. "My wife, Sarah, passed 4 years ago. Fever took her fast." Clara's heart ached with recognition. "I'm sorry," she murmured, knowing that hollow pain too well. Ethan's arm tightened slightly around her, a wordless acknowledgement. They rode in silence, the wind's moan and Titan's steady breaths the only sounds. Just as Clara felt her consciousness slipping, Ethan's voice cut through. "There it is. Look." She forced her eyes open to see a golden glow piercing the snow, growing brighter as they neared. A sturdy ranch house emerged, smoke curling from its chimney into the twilight. "Home," Ethan said simply, urging Titan toward a nearby barn. Part 2: A haven in the storm. In the heart of a Wyoming blizzard, Clara Thornton thought she'd lost everything, until a stranger's ranch house opened its doors, revealing that salvation sometimes comes with a hearth, a cradle, and a chance to heal. The golden glow of Ethan Caldwell's ranch house cut through the Wyoming twilight like a beacon, its promise of warmth pulling Clara Thornton back from the edge of despair. Titan, Ethan's steadfast stallion, carried them through the final stretch of snow, his hooves crunching a path toward the barn. Clara clung to her triplets, Emma, Jacob, and Lily, nestled between her and Ethan, their tiny bodies still alarmingly cool against her chest. The storm's fury roared on, but as Ethan guided them closer to the house, its solid timber walls and curling chimney smoke felt like a miracle after hours of frozen desperation. This was no mere shelter. It was a sanctuary, and Clara, for the first time since Samuel's death, dared to hope. Ethan dismounted first, his boots sinking into the snow as he reached up to lift Clara and the triplets from Titan's saddle. Her legs buckled the moment her feet touched the ground, exhaustion and cold sapping her strength, but Ethan's arms caught her before she could fall. "Easy now," he said, his green eyes scanning her pale face with concern. Without hesitation, he swept her up, babies and all, and carried them toward the house. Clara's throat tightened with gratitude, the weight of his kindness overwhelming her fragile defenses. "The horse," she murmured, her thoughts foggy but clinging to Titan's noble effort. "My foreman'll tend to Titan," Ethan assured her as the front door swung open, spilling light and warmth into the snowy night. A woman in her late 50s stood in the doorway, her silver-streaked auburn hair pulled into a neat bun, her eyes widening at the sight of them. "Mrs. Delaney," Ethan called over the wind, "we need warm blankets, hot water, and any milk we've got in the spring house. This is Mrs. Thornton and her babies, caught in the storm." The housekeeper stepped aside, already moving with practiced efficiency. "Guest room's ready, Mr. Caldwell." "I'll stoke the fire." Clara barely registered the exchange, the sudden warmth of the house hitting her like a physical blow after hours in the biting cold. The main room was a haven of rugged comfort, dominated by a massive stone fireplace where flames danced cheerfully. Sturdy furniture, a leather sofa, a polished oak table created an inviting space that spoke of both practicality and care, the kind of home built by hands that valued hard work and community. Ethan carried Clara to the hearth, settling her gently on a sofa pulled close to the fire. "Let's warm these little ones first," he said, helping her unwrap the triplets from their cocoon of blankets. Clara's heart pounded as she checked each infant, relief flooding her when she saw their tiny chests rise and fall. They were alive, though their skin felt too cold, their movements sluggish. Jacob let out a weak cry as the warmth reached him, the sound both heartbreaking and hopeful. Emma and Lily stirred faintly, their dark eyes blinking against the firelight. Mrs. Delaney returned with an armful of quilts and a determined expression. "Let me help with the little ones, ma'am," she said, reaching for Emma, the smallest. Clara hesitated, her maternal instincts flaring despite her exhaustion. These were her babies, her last link to Samuel, and trusting a stranger felt like a betrayal. Ethan seemed to sense her reluctance. "Mrs. Delaney's raised 5 of her own," he said quietly. "Her youngest grandbaby's barely 6 months. Your children are in good hands while you rest." His words, coupled with Clara's bone-deep fatigue, broke through her resistance. She nodded, allowing Mrs. Delaney to take Emma, watching as the older woman expertly checked the infant's condition. "This one needs warming slow," Mrs. Delaney pronounced, wrapping Emma in a quilt warmed by the fire. "Too fast and it'll shock her system," Clara nodded, recognizing the wisdom of experience. Lily and Jacob were soon tended to, their cries growing stronger as warmth seeped into their tiny limbs. As the triplets' immediate danger eased, Clara's own strength faltered. The room blurred, the firelight swimming before her eyes. "Mrs. Thornton," Ethan's voice came from a distance, sharp with worry. Clara, the use of her given name registered faintly as darkness closed in. She felt strong arms catch her as she slumped forward, then nothing. When Clara woke, she was tucked under heavy quilts in a 4-poster bed, a fire crackling in a small hearth across the room. A lamp glowed softly on a bedside table, casting shadows over unfamiliar walls. Panic surged through her. "My babies," she gasped, struggling to sit up. "They're right here, ma'am." Mrs. Delaney's steady voice came from a rocking chair near the fire. All fed and sleeping sound. Clara turned to see a large cradle beside the bed, close enough to touch. Inside, Emma, Jacob, and Lily slept side by side, their faces peaceful in the firelight, each wrapped in a soft quilt. Relief made her dizzy, and she sank back against the pillows. "How long was I out?" "Nearly 6 hours," Mrs. Delaney replied, rising to approach the bed. "You were half frozen and worn to the bone." Mr. Caldwell was mighty worried. Clara flushed, remembering how Ethan had carried her through the snow, his strength a lifeline. "I need to thank him." "Plenty of time for that come morning," Mrs. Delaney said firmly, handing her a mug of steaming broth. "Drink this. You'll need your strength, especially if you're nursing those little ones." The rich scent of chicken broth awakened a fierce hunger, and Clara sipped gratefully, the warmth spreading through her. "The babies," she said anxiously. "You said they've been fed." "Found goat's milk in the spring house," Mrs. Delaney nodded. "Not what they are used to, I reckon, but it'll do for now." Little Emma struggled a bit, but she's taken some and seems stronger. Tears of gratitude stung Clara's eyes. "If you hadn't found us—" "Best not dwell on what might have been," Mrs. Delaney interrupted, her tone practical but kind. "Mr. Caldwell's got a knack for being where he's needed. Some call it Providence." As if summoned, a soft knock sounded at the door and Ethan entered, carrying a tray with bread and more broth. "Mrs. Thornton," he said, his face softening with relief when he saw her awake. "Feeling better?" "Much," Clara managed, suddenly aware of her disheveled state, her auburn hair loose, her dress rumpled from the journey. She was a guest in this man's home, dependent on his charity, and the thought made her self-conscious. "Mr. Caldwell, I can never repay what you've done." "No repayment needed," he said firmly, setting the tray on a small table. Any decent man would have done the same, but Clara knew that wasn't true. Many would have passed a stranded wagon in such a storm, unwilling to risk their own safety. Fewer still would have taken on 3 infants. Mr. Hawkins, our driver, Ethan continued, his expression sobering. My men found him 2 miles north of your wagon, holed up in a pine thicket. He's badly frostbitten. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Will he recover? Ethan hesitated. Doc Ramsey's with him in the bunkhouse. He's hopeful, but he left the sentence unfinished, the weight clear. The news settled heavily on Clara. Mr. Hawkins had been kind, sharing stories of his grandchildren in Ohio during their journey. That his effort to save them might cost him so dearly was a fresh burden. The storm's still raging, Ethan added, glancing at the window where snow lashed the glass. Likely will for another day. You and your little ones are welcome here till it's safe to travel. Thank you, Clara said, the words inadequate for her gratitude. I'd hoped to reach my cousin in Sheridan by nightfall. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. Sheridan's 30 miles off, even in good weather, a tough trip with 3 babies. His tone held no judgment, but Clara felt the sting of her own recklessness. Samuel would have planned better, waited for spring. You're welcome to send word to your cousin when the trail's clear, Ethan added, as if sensing her self-reproach. Let her know you're safe. Emma stirred in the cradle, her whimper building to a cry. Clara moved to rise, but Ethan was already there, lifting the tiny girl with surprising ease. Hey there, little fighter, he said softly, cradling her against his broad chest. To Clara's astonishment, Emma quieted, her dark eyes studying Ethan solemnly. Do you have experience with babies? She asked, unable to hide her surprise. A shadow crossed his face. My sister stayed here a while after Sarah passed. Her youngest was a baby then. He handed Emma to Clara, their fingers brushing briefly. I'll leave you to them. Mrs. Delaney's nearby if you need anything tonight. At the door he paused as Clara called, Mr. Caldwell, he turned, questioning. Thank you, she said simply. For saving my children's lives. For saving mine. His green eyes held hers for a moment. Rest, Mrs. Thornton. Tomorrow's soon enough for what's next. As the door closed, Clara looked at Emma, then at Jacob and Lily sleeping soundly. Against all odds, they'd survived. The blizzard raged outside, but its threat felt distant now, unable to breach this unexpected haven. Settling back with Emma against her heart, Clara listened to the fire's crackle and her baby's steady breaths. For the first time since Samuel's death, a fragile hope flickered within her, like a candle defying the wind. Morning broke with sunlight streaming through frost-etched windows, the storm's fury spent. Clara woke to Mrs. Delaney's quiet movements, the housekeeper already tending to Jacob, who fussed softly. Morning, Mrs. Thornton, she said with a warm smile. This little man's ready for breakfast. Clara sat up, disoriented by the unfamiliar room until the previous day's events flooded back. Have they been up long? She asked, reaching for Lily, who was stirring. Just this one, Mrs. Delaney replied, cradling Jacob. The girls were content to sleep, though not for long, I'd wager. Clara nodded, relieved her babies showed no lasting effects from the cold. Mr. Hawkins, she asked, dreading the answer. Mrs. Delaney's face sobered. Doc Ramsey's still with him. Frostbite's bad on his hands and feet, but he's strong. There's hope, guilt twisted in Clara's chest. If she hadn't pushed to travel despite the weather, Hawkins might be unharmed. That storm caught everyone off guard, Mrs. Delaney added firmly, as if reading her thoughts. Even the old-timers didn't see it coming. A knock interrupted them, and Ethan entered with a tray of breakfast, biscuits, jam, and a small pitcher of goat's milk. "Morning," he said, his voice softening as he glanced at the sleeping infants. He set the tray by the window. "Thought you might be hungry." Clara tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, suddenly conscious of her appearance. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier now. "The storm's passed," Ethan continued, standing by the window. "Left 3 feet of snow, but the sky's clear. I've sent word to Sheridan about your delay." Clara's eyes widened. "Already?" "How?" Ethan shrugged. "My rider Tommy left at dawn. Best horseman I've got. Your cousin'll know you're safe by tonight." His thoughtfulness touched her deeply. "You've been so kind, Mr. Caldwell. I don't know how to repay you." His expression remained impassive, but his eyes softened. "No repayment needed, Mrs. Thornton. Your little ones look stronger today." "Thanks to you and Mrs. Delaney," Clara said, meeting his gaze. In the morning light, she saw Ethan more clearly, perhaps 35, his green eyes striking against a face weathered by sun and wind. His dark hair, slightly long by city standards, curled at his collar, giving him a rugged charm. "Your belongings should be here by midday," he added. "My men left at dawn to salvage what they could." Gratitude surged through Clara. "That's more than I hoped for. I thought everything was lost." "Wyoming's harsh enough without losing what you've brought," Ethan said pragmatically. He hesitated, then added, "I hear you're headed to your cousin in Sheridan." Clara nodded, shifting Lily as she began to fuss. "Margaret's all the family I have left since Samuel passed. She's offered us a home until I can find my footing." Ethan watched her soothe Lily, his expression thoughtful. "Raising 3 alone's no small feat." "No," Clara admitted softly, looking at Lily's tiny face. "It's not what I planned, but they're all I have of him." The words hung between them, a shared acknowledgement of loss. "Well," Ethan said finally, "you're welcome to stay till the trail's clear. Could be a week, given the snow." Before Clara mounds, Jacob let out a lusty cry, triggering Emma's wail. Ethan's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I'll leave you to your audience, Mrs. Thornton. Mrs. Delaney'll see to anything you need." With a nod, he left, and Clara turned to the demanding task of tending her triplets. Part 3: Roots in the Snow. Clara Thornton thought the Wyoming blizzard had stripped her bare, but in the quiet of Ethan Caldwell's ranch, she began to discover a strength she never knew, a strength that might just take root in this rugged land. The morning sun spilled across Ethan Caldwell's ranch, turning the snow-covered Bighorn Basin into a glittering expanse that belied its harshness. Clara Thornton, still adjusting to the unfamiliar comfort of the guest room, found solace in the routine of caring for her triplets, Emma, Jacob, and Lily. Mrs. Delaney's deft hands made quick work of tasks that would have overwhelmed Clara alone, her frontier pragmatism a steady anchor. "Mr. Caldwell's a good man," the housekeeper remarked as they swaddled the baby side by side. "Taking in a stranger with 3 infants in the dead of winter. That's rarer than a warm day in January." Clara glanced at Mrs. Delaney, catching a hint of something unspoken. "He seems capable," she said carefully, testing the waters. The housekeeper nodded, her eyes twinkling with approval. "Built this ranch from nothing but grit and a dream. Works harder than any man I know." She paused, then added softly, "Been lonely since Miss Sarah passed. Buries himself in work like it's all that keeps him going." The revelation startled Clara. 4 years seemed a long time to mourn, yet she knew the ache of Samuel's absence was still a raw wound in her own heart. "Were they married long?" she asked, unable to resist. 3 years, Mrs. Delaney replied, tucking a quilt around Emma. "Just long enough to build this house and dream of filling it with children." Her expression darkened. Miss Sarah was expecting when the fever took her. Lost them both in one night. Clara's heart constricted, her arms tightening around Jacob instinctively. The tragedy was almost too much to fathom. He doesn't talk about it, Mrs. Delaney continued, her voice low. But I see how he looks at your little ones, Mrs. Thornton, like a man starving for something he thinks he'll never have. The words lingered as Clara dressed in clean clothes from her recovered trunk, brushing her auburn hair into a simple knot. By mid-afternoon, she felt strong enough to leave the bedroom, settling the triplets in a nest of blankets near the main room's roaring fire. The space was grander than she'd realized, with high ceilings and wide windows that framed the snow-draped Wyoming plains. A stone fireplace anchored one wall while bookshelves lined another, filled with volumes of Emerson, Hawthorne, and even a worn copy of Whitman's Leaves of Grass, surprising for a rancher, suggesting a mind hungry for more than cattle and land. "They're tough little things," Ethan's voice came from the doorway. Clara turned to find him watching the triplets, his tall frame silhouetted against the bright snow outside. "Yes," she agreed, pride warming her voice. "They've faced more in 3 months than most do in a lifetime. Sometimes I think they're stronger than me." Ethan stepped inside, removing his hat and gloves, the scent of cold air and leather clinging to him. "Just spoke with Doc Ramsey," he said, his tone serious. "Hawkins is awake, asking for you. Worried sick about you and the babies." Relief flooded Clara. "Will he recover?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Lost 2 fingers to frostbite, and he'll need time, but he'll live. Doc says he can have visitors if you're up for it." Clara glanced at the triplets, hesitant to leave them. "I'll stay," Mrs. Delaney offered, emerging from the kitchen. "Go ease that poor man's mind." Wrapping herself in a borrowed shawl, Clara followed Ethan outside, the cold biting after the house's warmth. The day was breathtaking, the snow-covered plains sparkling under a clear blue sky, with the Bighorn Mountains rising in the distance. "It's stunning," Clara murmured, momentarily forgetting their errand. "Different from Philadelphia, I'd bet," Ethan said, offering his arm as they navigated a path cleared through waist-high snow. "Completely," Clara agreed, grateful for his support. "We had snow, but nothing this vast, this." "Untamed," Ethan nodded. "Wyoming's not for the timid, but she rewards those who learn her ways." His voice held a quiet love for the land. "You sound like you belong here," Clara said, studying his profile. "Can't imagine anywhere else now," he admitted. "Tried city life in St. Louis after the war. Felt like I was suffocating." Clara seized the opening. "You fought in the war," a shadow crossed his face. "Union cavalry, 4 years that aged me 20. The war's what drove me west, needed open skies and honest work after all that." They reached the bunkhouse, a low building 50 yards from the main house. Ethan paused, his expression softening. "Hawkins is shaken. Blames himself for what happened. It wasn't his fault," Clara protested. "The wheel broke," Ethan tapped his forehead. "He knows that here, then his heart. But not here. A man feels responsible for those in his care." The insight revealed as much about Ethan as it did about Hawkins, Clara suspected. Inside the bunkhouse, the long room was warmed by a pot-bellied stove. Hawkins lay near it, propped on pillows, his hands bandaged. "Mrs. Thornton," he exclaimed, relief washing over his gaunt face. "Thank God." "The babies, safe and well," Clara assured, sitting beside him. "Thanks to your courage and Mr. Caldwell's arrival." Hawkins' eyes filled with tears. "Thought I'd killed you all when I couldn't find the road." "You did right," Ethan interjected firmly. "Found shelter instead of wandering till you froze. That's why you're alive." Hawkins nodded weakly, but his gaze remained troubled. Your cousin in Sheridan'll be frantic. We're days late. Mr. Caldwell sent word, Clara said, patting his arm. Margaret will know we're safe by tonight. Hawkins looked at Ethan with gratitude. You're a good man, Mr. Caldwell. Not many'd ride out after a storm like that. Ethan merely nodded, deflecting the praise. They stayed a few minutes longer, Clara promising to visit again. As they walked back, she studied Ethan anew, seeing the soldier's straight-backed carriage, the alertness in his gaze. You were a cavalry officer? She asked. His eyebrows rose slightly. Captain, though that feels like another life. Tried settling in Missouri afterward. Met Sarah there. Her father ran the general store. His tone was guarded, and Clara sensed a story left untold. Instead, she asked, have you always been a rancher? His face relaxed. My pa raised horses before the war. I grew up in the trade. Cattle came later once I claimed this land. At the house, he held the door for her, the gesture quietly gallant. Inside, Mrs. Delaney was rocking Lily, while Emma and Jacob slept. No trouble at all, she reported, smiling. Though this one likes to be on the move. Clara laughed, recognizing Lily's need for motion. Samuel used to say she'd run before she crawled. The mention of her husband brought a familiar pang, but it was softened by the warm scene, Mrs. Delaney with Lily, the triplets safe, Ethan's solid presence. I should check the afternoon feeding, Ethan said, lingering a moment. Your belongings'll be here soon. After he left, Mrs. Delaney gave Clara a knowing look. He's been in and out all day, checking on the babies, acting like he's just passing through. Clara's cheeks warmed. He's been kind. Kindness and something more, Mrs. Delaney said shrewdly. Never seen him ride out in a blizzard for anyone else, Clara protested. He'd have done the same for anyone, but Mrs. Delaney's smile suggested otherwise. Maybe, but I haven't seen him look at anyone like he looks at you and those babies since Miss Sarah. Part 4, Shadows of Motive. In the glow of Ethan Caldwell's hearth, Clara Thornton began to feel at home, but a visitor from Sheridan arrived, casting shadows that threatened to unravel the fragile trust she'd built. The afternoon sun climbed higher, melting the edges of the snowdrifts that blanketed Ethan Caldwell's ranch. Clara Thornton, now settled into a rhythm with her triplets, felt the ranch's routines weaving a fragile sense of belonging. Mrs. Delaney's stories of frontier life, barn dances, quilting bees, and the unspoken code of helping neighbors, painted Wyoming as a land of harsh beauty and fierce community. But beneath Clara's growing ease, questions about her cousin Margaret's intentions in Sheridan stirred unease, like a distant storm cloud on a clear day. Ethan's men returned with Clara's belongings by noon, their sleds piled with her trunk and the triple cradle Samuel had crafted. The sight of the cradle, its oak curves polished by his hands, brought a lump to Clara's throat. She ran her fingers over it, remembering his late-night work, his laughter when he joked about needing a bigger house for our little army. Mrs. Delaney, sensing her mood, busied herself with the triplets, giving Clara a moment to grieve. Ethan appeared in the main room, his hat in hand. Thought you might like to see the workshop, he said, his tone almost shy. Been working on a new cradle that could fit all three better than what we've rigged up. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Clara nodded. I'd love that. Mrs. Delaney volunteered to watch the babies, who were napping after a feeding. Ethan led Clara through a side door into a converted dining room, now a woodworking shop organized with military precision, tools hung in neat rows, surfaces spotless. In the center stood a large cradle, nearly complete, its sides adorned with delicate carvings of pronghorn and sagebrush, symbols of the Wyoming wilds. It's beautiful, Clara breathed, tracing the smooth wood. "You made this today," Ethan shook his head. "Been at it for a while, off and on. Didn't know who it was for, just felt the need to build it." The admission that he'd crafted this without a purpose moved Clara deeply. "It's the kindest gift anyone's offered us," she said, her voice thick. Ethan's expression was unreadable in the lamplight. "No use to me otherwise," he said quietly. "Never thought I'd see children in it here." The weight of his loss hung between them. Acting on instinct, Clara touched his arm. "I'm so sorry about Sarah, Ethan. And your child." He stiffened slightly but didn't pull away. "Been a long time," he said, his voice rough. "Grief doesn't always fade like people expect," Clara said softly, thinking of Samuel. "Some days it's like he's just stepped out for a moment." Ethan's eyes met hers, a shared understanding passing between them. "Mrs. Delaney told you?" he asked. Clara nodded. "She thought I should know." "I hope that's okay." "It is," he said after a pause. "I don't mind you knowing." He ran a hand along the cradle's edge. "Sarah would have liked you. She had your strength, your way of facing things head on." The comparison from a man who'd loved so deeply felt like a rare honor. "I wish I'd known her," Clara said. "So do I," Ethan replied simply. He stepped back, breaking the moment. "I'll finish this tomorrow. Your three deserve better than a drawer." "Thank you," Clara said, sensing his need for distance. "For everything." As they returned to the main room, Clara felt a shift, a barrier lowered, a connection forged through shared loss. The ranch house, with its sturdy walls and warm hearth, was becoming more than a refuge. It was a place where she could imagine healing. Over supper, Ethan surprised her with his breadth of knowledge, discussing everything from territorial politics to Dickens, with a quiet intelligence that belied his rugged exterior. "You're surprised," he teased, catching her expression. Clara blushed. "I didn't expect a rancher to quote Walden or have opinions on the governor's land policies." He grinned, a rare flash of youthfulness. "Most don't. I lean into what people expect of a rancher, makes life simpler." The admission hinted at a man who guarded his depths carefully, a complexity Clara found increasingly compelling. After supper, as Mrs. Delaney cleared the dishes, Clara felt the ranch's rhythm settling into her bones, the crackle of the fire, the distant lowing of cattle, the promise of a community that valued resilience over pedigree. The next week passed in a blur of routine and discovery. The ranch operated like a small town, each hand knowing their role, from mending fences to tending the herd. By the fifth day, a letter arrived from Margaret in Sheridan, carried by a grizzled courier unfazed by the snow-packed trails. Clara read it aloud over breakfast, her voice faltering at Margaret's tone, relieved but oddly detached. "She sounds glad we're safe," Clara said, folding the letter, "but not exactly eager to fetch us herself." Mrs. Delaney snorted. "Some families more talk than action." Ethan, sipping coffee, added, "Sensible to wait out the snow, but I get why you couldn't." His understanding, free of judgment, warmed Clara. Unlike her Philadelphia relatives, who'd called her journey reckless, Ethan saw the desperation that had driven her west. "She wants us to come to Sheridan as soon as the trail's clear," Clara said, tucking the letter away. "Mr. Hawkins should be well enough in a week or two, per Doc Ramsey." Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, disappointment perhaps, before he nodded. "We'll arrange an escort when the time comes." "The trail's tricky, even in clear weather." Clara hesitated, surprised by her reluctance to leave. The ranch, with its sturdy routines and Ethan's quiet strength, felt like a home she hadn't expected to find. Later, she watched Ethan from the main room's bay window, working with a skittish colt in the corral. His patience was mesmerizing, each movement calm and deliberate, coaxing trust from the nervous animal. "He's got a way with creatures that fear," Mrs. Delaney observed, joining her. "Always has," Clara, intrigued, asked. "Did he train horses before cattle?" "His first love," the housekeeper confirmed. "Cattle came later, when he saw bigger profit in beef." As the colt finally let Ethan stroke its neck, Clara saw parallels to her own journey, a wary heart slowly opening to kindness. "He's offered to show me the ranch today," Clara said, hesitant. "If you can watch the triplets for a bit." Mrs. Delaney's eyes lit up. "I'd love nothing more. That Jacob's got a spark reminds me of my grandson." An hour later, bundled in a borrowed coat suited for Wyoming's bite, Clara joined Ethan by the stables. He'd saddled a gentle bay mare, Belle, for her, and his own stallion, Titan. "Ridden before?" he asked, concern in his gaze. "Some as a girl," Clara admitted. "My father kept horses." Ethan helped her mount, his hands steady. "Belle's as calm as they come. She'll take care of you." Clara settled into the saddle, the astride position unfamiliar but secure. "Ready?" Ethan asked, swinging onto Titan. She nodded, nerves giving way to curiosity. "Show me your world, Mr. Caldwell." His smile transformed his face, erasing years of wear. "Ethan," he corrected. "If we're spending the day together, let's skip the formalities." "Ethan," she repeated, smiling back. "And I'm Clara." They rode at a leisurely pace, Ethan pointing out landmarks, a creek that would green the meadows come spring, a calving barn he'd built his first winter. "Nearly 2,000 head now," he said, pride quiet but evident. "Started with 20. Clara, genuinely curious, asked, "How'd you build all this?" His expression grew distant. "Had a partner at first, my war buddy, Nate Ramsey, Doc's brother. Lost him to a flash flood our second year, saving some calves. The loss, another in Ethan's life, hung heavy." "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. He brushed it off. "Ranch life's beautiful but brutal. You learn to take the good with the bad." They crested a rise, the ranch sprawling below, sheltered by mountains yet open to vast grazing lands. "It's breathtaking," Clara said, awed. Sarah said the same, Ethan replied, his voice softer. "Called this spot a window to forever." Sharing the memory seemed to ease him, and Clara felt a pang of her own. "Samuel wanted land, not a ranch, but a country practice where our kids could run free." She laughed bittersweetly. "He didn't expect 3 at once," Ethan chuckled. "Bet that was a shock." "The doctor's face when he told us," Clara recalled, smiling. "Samuel nearly passed out." Their shared laughter marked a shift, a step toward healing. But hoofbeats interrupted, a ranch hand galloping toward them, his face urgent. "Boss, that young heifer from the Carter stock's in trouble. Calf's coming early, turned wrong." Ethan's demeanor shifted to decisive command. "Where's Jed?" "Down with fever," the hand replied. "Doc's with him." Ethan turned to Clara, apology in his eyes. "I've gotta go." "I'll follow," she said, determination overriding her inexperience. He nodded, spurring Titan toward a distant barn, Clara urging Belle into a trot behind him. Part 5, Tensions and Truths. A distressed heifer in a Wyoming barn pulled Clara Thornton into the heart of ranch life. But it was a stranger's arrival that revealed the first cracks in her fragile new world. By the time Clara reached the calving barn, Ethan and 2 ranch hands were already at work, the air thick with the heifer's pained lowing. The young cow's sides heaved, her eyes wild with fear as contractions failed to deliver the calf. Clara dismounted, drawn by the urgency, and stepped inside, shedding her coat. "Calf's turned wrong," a young hand, Wilson said, worry creasing his face. "Can't birth natural." Ethan, sleeves rolled up, was grim. "We'll have to turn it." Wilson, "Rope her." Jenkins more light. Clara stepped forward. Can I help? Ethan looked up, surprise flashing across his face. This isn't exactly. I help Samuel with difficult births, Clara cut in calmly. Human ones, but the principles can't be too different. Respect flickered in Ethan's eyes. We need to reposition the calf before the mother's too weak to push, he explained, accepting her offer. I'll turn it, but she's fighting. Let me calm her, Clara said, approaching the heifer's head. The animal rolled her eyes but didn't thrash as Clara spoke softly, stroking her muzzle. Easy, girl. We're here. Ethan worked with practiced skill, his hands steady despite the heifer's distress. Clara's soothing presence kept the animal still, and within minutes, Ethan had repositioned the calf. Push now, he urged, and the heifer with a final heave delivered a slick, trembling calf. The barn erupted in quiet relief as the newborn stirred, its mother nosing it gently. You're a natural, Ethan said to Clara, wiping sweat from his brow. She smiled, adrenaline fading. I just followed your lead. Back at the house, Clara's confidence lingered, but news of Mr. Hawkins tempered her mood. Doc Ramsey met them in the main room, his expression grave. Hawkins' fever's broken, but the frostbite's taken more than we hoped. He's lost 3 fingers and part of a foot. He won't drive a wagon again, Clara's heart sank. When can he travel? Not for a month, maybe longer, Doc replied. The strain could undo his healing. The news anchored Clara to the ranch, relief mingling with unease at the complications their stay created. That night, unable to sleep, Clara slipped into the main room to check the triplets. Ethan was already there, gazing at the cradle, his face softened by firelight. You should rest, he said as she approached. It's been a long day. My mind's too busy, she admitted, standing beside him. Worries keep circling, his eyes met hers. Hawkins'll pull through, and other concerns. We'll sort them, Clara looked at her sleeping babies. I never imagined this when we left Philadelphia, how complicated it'd get. Life's rarely what we plan, Ethan said gently. Sometimes the detours lead somewhere better. His words carried unspoken weight. Clara hesitated, then ventured. I've been thinking about Judge Harper's concerns. The judge had visited earlier, hinting at whispers about propriety given Clara's extended stay. He suggested a governess position, she continued, to quiet talk. Ethan's expression tightened. That'd solve appearances, but it's not. He trailed off, searching for words. Not what? Clara prompted softly. Not how I see you, he finished, his voice low. Not as an employee or even just a friend. Her pulse quickened. Ethan, Jacob's cry cut through the moment, and Clara moved to soothe him, the intimate air broken. As she cradled her son, she glanced at Ethan. We should finish this talk tomorrow. His smile was warm. Tomorrow, then. But morning brought chaos. A ranch hand galloped in, reporting a wolf attack on an outlying herd. 8 calves lost, 2 cows injured. Ethan and his men rode out to move the cattle, leaving Clara to tend the triplets with Mrs. Delaney. Late morning, an unexpected visitor arrived. A woman in her early 40s, dressed in elegant furs despite the rugged trail. Beatrice Langley, she announced when Mrs. Delaney opened the door. I'm here for Ethan Caldwell. The housekeeper's face betrayed a flicker of dismay. Mr. Caldwell's out on ranch business, Mrs. Langley. Not back till evening. I'll wait, Beatrice declared, her tone brooking no argument. The ride from Sheridan was taxing, and I won't leave without seeing him. Mrs. Delaney had no choice but to invite her in. As Beatrice shed her coat, her sharp gaze landed on Clara, who sat by the fire with Emma. And you are, she asked, her voice implying Clara was a servant. Clara Thornton, Clara replied, rising with dignity. A guest of Mr. Caldwell's. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Indeed. How unexpected. Mrs. Delaney intervened smoothly. Mrs. Thornton and her children were stranded in last month's blizzard. Mr. Caldwell saved them from certain death. How heroic, Beatrice said, her tone suggesting otherwise. She settled by the fire, arranging her skirts with precision. Ethan always had a soft spot for strays. The insult stung, but Clara kept her composure. Mr. Caldwell's been exceedingly kind, she said evenly, as has Mrs. Delaney and everyone here. Beatrice's smile was cold. Yes, Ellen's always been loyal to the ranch, even after poor Sarah's passing. Her familiar use of Mrs. Delaney's name and mention of Ethan's late wife marked her territory. Coffee, Mrs. Langley. Mrs. Delaney offered, her expression neutral. Please, Beatrice replied, turning to Emma. Your child. One of 3, Clara said, noting Beatrice's surprise. Triplets. How demanding, Beatrice said, recovering. And your husband passed just before their birth, Clara nodded, unwilling to share Samuel's memory with this icy stranger. How unfortunate, Beatrice said, her words devoid of warmth. And now you're here with 3 infants. Quite the coincidence. The implication, that Clara had orchestrated her stay to ensnare Ethan, was clear. There's nothing fortunate about a blizzard, Mrs. Langley, Clara said with quiet dignity. Without Mr. Caldwell, we'd have perished. Beatrice's eyes flickered with reluctant respect. Yes, Ethan does have a knack for timely rescues. Mrs. Delaney returned with coffee, her timing suggesting she'd lingered to give Clara space to handle the visitor. Mrs. Langley was a friend of Sarah's, she explained to Clara. Their families knew each other in Missouri before the war. More than knew, Beatrice corrected. The Caldwells and Langleys are tied by blood. My late husband, Henry, was Ethan's second cousin. The revelation clarified her proprietary heir, a widow with familial claims, likely seeing herself as Ethan's future. I've been managing Henry's business in Sheridan since his passing, Beatrice added. Ethan's been kind enough to advise me. That's why I'm here, business that couldn't wait. Clara sensed deeper motives. Beatrice hadn't braved winter trails for mere advice. The triplets' cries, Lily and Jacob waking, offered Clara an escape. Excuse me, she said, rising with Emma. The children need me, Beatrice waved dismissively. Of course children are so consuming, her tone suggested disdain. Clara retreated to her room, grateful for the respite but troubled by Beatrice's presence. Her prolonged stay at the ranch was stirring complications. Judge Harper's propriety concerns, Beatrice's territoriality, Hawkins' slow recovery. Beneath it all lay her growing feelings for Ethan, and the suspicion he felt the same. Their interrupted talk last night had teetered on confessions neither was ready to voice. As she tended her babies, Clara faced an uncomfortable truth. Her haven was becoming a web of tensions, and her place in Ethan's world was far from secure. Part 6, Spring's Promise. Clara Thornton thought the Wyoming blizzard had tested her limits, but it was a cousin's betrayal and a cowboy's love that revealed her true strength, and the home she'd been searching for all along. Ethan Caldwell returned to the ranch house under a star-strewn Wyoming sky, his shoulders heavy with the day's losses. 8 calves to wolves, 2 cows unlikely to survive. Stamping snow from his boots on the porch, he braced for the business awaiting him, but the sight inside stopped him cold. Beatrice Langley sat by the fire, her elegance a stark contrast to Clara Thornton's quiet grace as she served tea, her posture rigid with restrained dignity. The air crackled with tension, a silent standoff between 2 women whose paths had collided in Ethan's world. "Ethan, darling," Beatrice rose, crossing to him with practiced warmth. "I've waited hours." "Beatrice," Ethan said, masking his surprise with a polite nod. "Didn't expect you till the spring meeting in Sheridan." Her laugh was bright but brittle. "Business couldn't wait. Timber contracts need your signature." Clara gathered the tea tray, her eyes averted. "I'll leave you to it," she murmured. "No need," Ethan said quickly, his tone sharper than intended. "You've as much right to this room as any guest." Beatrice's eyebrow arched. "Actually, Ethan, this is confidential. Perhaps Mrs. Thornton wouldn't mind." Clara nodded with quiet dignity. "I should check the triplets." As she left, Ethan noted the strength in her bearing, a far cry from the desperate widow he'd found in the blizzard. Beatrice's voice cut through his thoughts. "She certainly made herself at home." Ethan removed his coat deliberately. "Clara and her children are my guests for as long as they need." Beatrice's smile was sharp. "How charitable." Though, Ethan, even for Wyoming, this arrangement's raising eyebrows. "Judge Harper mentioned it in Sheridan." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Judge Harper should mind his own business." Beatrice softened her tone, laying a hand on his arm. "We care about your reputation. The war hero, the widower who built a ranch from nothing. Don't risk it for a pretty face with 3 ready-made children." Anger flared in Ethan. "Clara Thornton's no opportunist. She's a woman of character, raising her kids alone after losing everything." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "You're quite familiar using her name." "We've moved past formalities," Ethan said evenly. "Shared danger does that." Beatrice shifted tactics. "I brought the contracts, and the Henderson property, next to your north pasture, is available. Could expand your ranch." Ethan recognized her redirect. "I'll review them tomorrow." "It's been a long day, Beatrice," she pouted. "You wouldn't send me back to Sheridan tonight." "The roads are treacherous." Sighing, Ethan arranged for Mrs. Delaney to prepare the guest room, knowing Beatrice had planned to stay. Later, drawn to Clara's room by the sound of a soft lullaby, Ethan knocked gently. She opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. "Thought you'd be with Beatrice," she said. "Business can wait," he replied, stepping into the lamplit room. The triplets slept in their cradle, their faces plump with health. "They've grown," Ethan observed, marveling at their transformation. "Resilient like their mother," Clara said, her voice soft. Ethan studied her. "I'm sorry for Beatrice's manner. She's territorial." Clara's expression flickered with hurt. "She sees you as hers. She's got expectations I've never encouraged," Ethan said firmly. "Her husband was my cousin, but it's always been business." Clara nodded, uncertainty lingering. "It's not my place to question your relationships, isn't it?" Ethan asked, the question heavy. Before she could answer, Mrs. Delaney's voice called about ranch matters, interrupting yet again. "This isn't over," Ethan promised, his eyes holding Clara's. "I'm counting on it," she replied, a new confidence in her smile. Morning brought a letter from Margaret in Sheridan, its tone impatient, urging Clara's arrival. "She's arranged introductions with eligible men," Clara told Ethan as they stood by the corral, watching Titan nuzzle her hand. "Including a Dr. Lawrence Bennett, a widower with a fine practice." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Is that what you want?" "Sheridan society." Clara took a breath, the cold air sharp. "When I left Philadelphia, I thought Margaret's home was my only option. I had no skills, no resources. Then the blizzard and you showed me I'm stronger than I knew." "You were always strong," Ethan said quietly. "This place just brought it out." Clara gestured to the ranch. "Wyoming demands growth. There's no room for helplessness." Ethan's gaze was steady. "And Sheridan? What's it got that you can't find here?" The question laid bare her choice. Security, maybe, she said. A life like I knew. But not the one I want now. Her smile held certainty. I've changed, Ethan. A shout from the bunkhouse broke the moment. Doc Ramsey beckoned, reporting Hawkins' fever had broken. Inside, Hawkins, gaunt but lucid, gripped Clara's hand. Mrs. Thornton, something's been gnawing at me about your cousin. Met her in Philadelphia to arrange your trip, and her talk. It wasn't right. Called you and the baby's burdens, not family. Overheard her with a man, saying she'd secure the Thornton inheritance once you arrived. Clara's stomach dropped. Inheritance? Samuel left nothing but debts. Hawkins shook his head. She seemed sure, ma'am. Felt like I was sending you into a trap. Outside, Clara recounted Hawkins' warning to Ethan, her mind racing. Samuel's grandfather had a land grant in Wyoming, 5,000 acres, unclaimed wilderness. He called it worthless. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Land grants can be gold, with the railroad coming. Margaret might know something you don't, Clara gasped. If she needed me in Sheridan to claim it, or your children as Samuel's heirs, Ethan added grimly. She's been pushing you to bring them. That afternoon, Clara found the grant documents in Samuel's papers, a faded map, and an 1839 deed for land along the Bighorn River. Ethan studied it, his expression sharpening. Clara, this adjoins the Henderson property Beatrice pushed me to buy. That's no coincidence, the pieces clicked. Margaret's been digging into the grant, and word reached Beatrice, Clara murmured. I need to secure this for my children. It's their legacy, Ethan nodded. We'll ride to the county seat tomorrow. The land office can register it in their names. Why do you help us so much? Clara asked suddenly, her voice soft. Ethan's eyes held hers. From the moment I found you in that storm, shielding your babies with your last breath, I saw a heart like mine, brave, loving, unbroken by loss. Tears pricked Clara's eyes. I've fought my feelings, thinking it was too soon after Samuel, that I was mistaking gratitude for more. I get it, Ethan said. After Sarah, I thought love was done for me. But it's not diminished by time, it's transformed. Clara moved to the window, snow falling softly outside. I thought my life ended with Samuel, that I'd only exist for my children. Now I see possibilities, a different strength, a different love. Ethan joined her, his voice low. Whatever you choose, Sheridan, the land, your path, I'll back you not out of duty but because you've earned it. Clara turned, resolute. I'm not going to Sheridan. Margaret's plans, whatever they are, won't touch my children. Their future's here. Relief flashed across Ethan's face. You're welcome to stay as long as you need, Clara smiled. My next steps depend on a certain conversation we keep dodging. Ethan's expression warmed. Let's finish it. Before he could, riders approached, Judge Harper with two men, their faces grave. In Ethan's study, the judge introduced Marshall Tucker and lawyer Amos Reed. Your cousin Margaret's been arrested, Harper said. Attempted fraud and conspiracy. Clara gasped. Arrested, Tucker explained. Margaret and an associate, Silas Grant, had tried filing false documents to claim the Thornton land grant, planning to gain guardianship of the Triplets to control it, then sell the land and abandon the children to an orphanage. Beatrice Langley tipped us off, Harper added. She mentioned Ethan's inquiries about the Henderson properties linked to your grant. Clara's mind reeled. All this time, I thought Margaret wanted to help. Amos presented papers to secure the grant in the Triplets' names, with Clara as trustee. She signed, hands trembling, as the betrayal sank in. Alone in the study, Clara sank into a chair. My own cousin. Ethan knelt beside her, taking her hands. What matters is you and your kids are safe. The land's theirs, a foundation for their future. Clara met his eyes, drawing strength. Because of you, Ethan. Your inquiries saved us. He shook his head. You'd have fought for them with or without me. You're stronger than you know. Clara squeezed his hands. This path brought me to a crossroads I never expected. Ethan's voice was steady. You're free now, Clara. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. She studied him, seeing the vulnerability he rarely showed. When I look at this ranch, I see life carved from hardship, beauty, and challenge. That's changed me, Ethan. I want a life of choice, partnership, love built on respect. Ethan's breath caught. I've been falling for you since that blizzard, Clara. Your courage, your heart. Everything since has only deepened it. Joy surged through Clara. I love you, Ethan Caldwell. Not for saving us, but for who you are. He covered her hand, kissing her palm. I never thought I'd find this again. Clara Thornton, will you stay here as my wife? Let me help raise your children, be their father in truth. Her answer was simple, heartfelt. Yes, with all my heart. Their kiss was a gentle promise, sweet with the weight of all they'd overcome. Mrs. Delaney, predictably smug, began planning a spring wedding to fill this house with the family it deserves. Judge Harper rode out to bless the union, grumbling, knew it from the start. Even Beatrice sent a curt congratulatory note before leaving for San Francisco. Hawkins, recovering, stayed on as a ranch hand, eager to watch the triplets grow. The house transformed. Ethan's study became a nursery, the workshop filled with toys, the future planned with room for 3 children to thrive. One March afternoon, Ethan brought Clara and the triplets to a hot spring on the ranch, where green shoots defied the snow. He presented a locket, its gems symbolizing the triplets, with a portrait of Samuel and Clara inside, space for their wedding photo opposite. So you can carry both loves, he said. Clara, tears in her eyes, fastened it around her neck. It's perfect. As the triplets babbled, Jacob taking wobbly steps, Ethan slipped an arm around her. Our story began in winter's darkest hour, but it'll grow through every season. That's my vow. Clara leaned into him, watching Emma and Lily reach for spring wildflowers. The blizzard had nearly destroyed them, but it had led to this, a family forged in resilience, a home rooted in love. In 2 weeks, she'd wed Ethan before Judge Harper, claiming the ranch as theirs. The Thornton land grant, secured for the triplets, stretched beyond, a legacy of endurance. Penny for your thoughts, Ethan murmured. Clara smiled. Just thinking how the harshest paths lead to the most beautiful places. As Jacob tottered forward, Ethan caught him, laughing. Already a pioneer, like his mother. Gathering their children, Clara felt the locket warm against her skin, a bridge between past and future. Samuel's memory would live in the triplets, but the life ahead belonged to this family, born in a blizzard and blossoming in Wyoming spring. Ready for home? Ethan asked, lifting Lily. Yes, Clara said, her voice sure. Home wasn't just the ranch. It was Ethan, the triplets, and the love that would carry them through any storm.